Hello, it's Brad Laurie, your BlockchainBrad, and today we're talking about all things Conflux. And you can see from his hoodie, he is definitely representing this. His name is Forgiven. Mate, thank you very much for being on the channel to let us know all about what Conflux is doing.
Okay, thank you for inviting me, Brad. I can't wait to dive into the details.
No worries, mate. And I thank you for your time. I know you're very busy as one of the co-founders of Conflux. Now, for many people, it's highly technological. So strap yourselves in. We're going to try and unpack this technology to understand exactly what they're trying to do with real use cases, with real applicability and real relevance in the blockchain and beyond. So starting off, the first blockchain that can achieve high TPS without sacrificing decentralization. Now that is a common narrative we hear everywhere from, those layer one blockchains. So I want to dig deeper. So let's go beyond that. Let's explore the Nakamoto Consensus itself. Let's start with that. How do you relate to that as opposed to just simply proof of work?
So I think, first let me explain a little bit what is about Nakamoto Consensus, what is proof of work, right?
Okay.
So I think Nakamoto Consensus innovation actually focuses on three things, right? Decentralization, security, and throughput, right? So proof of work is actually a mechanism used for anti-CBAL attack. So it emphasizes the security and decentralization. So Conflux actually follow the exact tech paths using proof of work mechanism for anti-CBAL attack. So that means Conflux has nothing, no sacrifice to decentralization and security. However, it improves on the throughput side using a tree graph which is derived from the Ghost rule. And the main point is actually to process concurrent blocks, which those blocks will be considered as forks in Bitcoins and Ethereums. But those blocks will be included in Conflux network. They use tree graph to link them all together.
Right. Well, let's break it down for those, including myself, who are trying to really understand the fundamentals of Conflux. Now, with the trilemma, we see those three parts of scalability, decentralization, and security. They're those buzzwords. Now, with proof of work, they really address or redress the core aspects of decentralization and security. It's a highly probabilistic design as well with that core mechanism of POW. Now, what you're saying is that when you are talking about the next development, which is specifically your TG, your T graph, that's addressing specifically the scalability component because you're going to focus on throughput and reducing latency. So I think it's important that we really do understand the difference between the Nakamoto Consensus and the POW mechanism itself, because you're really focused on building out that throughput.
Right, exactly. So Nakamoto Consensus itself is actually a consensus mechanism, right? It's actually say how people are actually agreeing with each other. They come up with a single chain, right? And then everybody is following that same single chain. All other fork blocks are discarded because they are not the longest chain. So everybody have to generate a block and then attach their block to the longest chain. So that's Nakamoto Consensus. That's not proof of work. Right? Proof of work is actually computing, using computing power to compute for who can generate the next block. But once you have that next block, it still depends on whether you are attaching yourself to the longest chain. So that's actually Nakamoto Consensus. However, if you are not attached to the longest chain, you are considered as a fork block. Right? So fork block are actually thrown away in Bitcoin and Ethereum systems. Well, actually fork block themselves wrap a lot of transactions. So what if you can utilize those fork blocks? So Conflux actually use the tree graph mechanism to do that. So those fork blocks, they will have parent edges linked to their parent block, and they use reference edges to link all those other blocks. So those fork blocks are all included in this graph. They look like a small tree going forward.
Right, and that makes a lot of sense because we've heard the term JAG before, and it has to be raised because the direct acyclic graph is often conflated or confused with blockchain itself. Now, clearly you are by fundamental design blockchain. You have, from the ground up, you've built out your blockchain system via a fork of the models that have pre-existed in the first iterations of blockchain itself. But again, it's the fundamental tree graph that we have to focus on in developing this, so that again, that throughput can be developed and franchised and make for a more productive and usable system. Are we on the right track?
Yes, yes. So so again, let me explain the tree graph again. So tree graph itself, right? So in Bitcoin, in Nakamoto Consensus, you always have to follow the longest chain, right? Mm-hmm. So once your blocks are not on the longest chain, your blocks is actually thrown away, right? And they are not they are not contributing to the throughput. Mm-hmm. Although those blocks, they may include some transactions within the block. However, in Conflux tree graph consensus, that's different. In those blocks, they have transactions, and those blocks are included in the chains, but they are not a single chain. Actually, they are a tree graph. Those blocks are linked together by point on two type of edges. One is called parent edge, another is reference edge. Mm-hmm. So in this way, they can have an order of all those blocks. Although they are not on the longest chain or they are not a single chain, they are actually a graph. So once you have the total orders of all the blocks, you can have the orders of all those transactions. Right. Then you have the full history of how transaction happens, right?
Got it. Okay, so essentially it's all about trying to improve the ordering, trying to maximize the benefits of, once again, that original Nakamoto Consensus design, and then also making the best of the proof of work for the value it brings, which is that security and also decentralization. But I also want to talk about how do you...
Another point I want to add to that is actually in Bitcoins, there's two ways to improve the throughput of transactions, right? Mm-hmm. One way is actually to increase the size of the block. So that's what Bitcoin Cash did. It increased from 1 megabyte to 10 megabytes.
Yes.
Another way is actually increase the speed of block generation. But all of these two methods have problems. Is that it has a latency problem. So the bigger the block, right? So the higher possibility you're generating the block while you're not receiving the block that already been produced. Exactly the same for increasing the speed for generating blocks, right? Because it takes a minute for the block to reach the whole internet. So if you increase the speed to less than 1 minute, and that's even shorter, you have a lot of forks. So all those forks are not contributing to the throughput of a whole network. So how we do that? We use tree graph to link them together. So that's why the throughput can be improved by 100 times within the Conflux consensus.
Got it. Right. Now let's explore that, the tree graph in the context of scalability, because that really is the most important part of Conflux, I would say, in terms of trying to be really applicable for use cases when it comes to seamless integration into developer worlds, into enterprise sectors, and even just for users generally. So in the past, we've talked about things like horizontal scaling, or we've seen the constant increase of nodes, full nodes, so that we can see a much more robust system evolve over time. So how does the increase in scalability relate to tree graph, and also relate that to how you can properly scale over time, so that you're not doing something like EOS, for example, or Hashgraph, where they just have such few nodes?
Well, I mean, using the tree graph consensus in the meantime, this Conflux run under the proof of work mechanism, which means you're totally decentralized network. So even in my dining room, even at my house, I can mine to the Conflux network. So there's no super nodes. Anybody with a laptop can do that. Although once the professional miners run into this network, you may not be able to get a block. But I mean, in the testnet, there's not a lot of computing power. The hash rate is low. My laptop can even mine to the testnet. I did that last night. You can do that too. You can do that in Australia, in Africa, in America, anywhere. So it's as long as it's run under a proof of work, it's fully decentralized, it's permissionless.
Right. And then if you add tree graph into it, is that what really makes it so that it, again, it's more accessible to more people in a more effective and efficient way?
Right. So once you have that tree graph, so a lot of people can actually enjoy these benefits of high throughput. So high throughput means two things. So I mean, in Ethereum, when you have a CryptoKitty games, you got a whole network traffic jam. It takes a long time for people to send transaction to the other one. So this network become not usable, right? That's one thing. Another thing is even the network is not traffic jam in Ethereum. When you're using smart contracts, actually you are paying a very high fee. For one transaction, you're probably paying $0.50. Or if you want to, buy, make a to collateralize your Ethereum, generating DAIs and using DAI to buy some other cryptos. As long as it's decentralized applications, you're generating a lot of fees. Well, in Conflux, because the throughput is improved by 100 times, so the cost is increased to so minimum. So that's why I believe a lot more people can enjoy this now without the pain in the ass of those transaction fees, or with for longer times when there's a very hot app traffic jam the whole network.
Right. Now, in doing these things, not only you're going to be cost saving because you're reducing the costs via the inclusion of the tree graph, but you're also going to solve the bottleneck problem, and that comes up in your literature specifically. So talk us through that in terms of bottleneck issues with regard to the problems inherent in the other blockchains we've seen. CryptoKitties was a great example of the real problems that Ethereum faced when it was suddenly faced with a huge surge and influx in computational pressure and transactional pressure.
So let me walk through about the TPS of several major POW networks. So for Bitcoins, it's about like 6, right? So you cannot really use it as a payment network. So that's why people come up with Lightning Network. But that's actually a sacrifice to decentralization. Once some intermediate hub is becoming too large, you can charge a lot of pass-through fees, right? So for Ethereum itself, if you run smart contracts, it actually takes a lot of transaction TPS if you are interacting with the real world. To give you an example, let's say DAI. DAI is a decentralized stablecoin.
Right.
But one thing you have to interact with the real world is it has to frequently ask the price of Ethereum price from some centralized exchanges. Say how much Ethereum is worth. US dollars, right? So let's say if you want to do Ethereum against RMB, against euros, against British pound, for all those currencies, you got to ask some centralized exchanges what's the price for Ethereum at that point of time, right? So that all consume transaction per second. So for Ethereum, it limits the possibilities that you interact with real world. Let's say if you want to do some derivatives, some smart contract on financial derivatives. Let's say you want to buy it on S&P 500. You got to ask S&P 500 index what its level is at when you initiate the smart contract and what level it is when you close the smart contract. All this has to interact with the real world and all this use transactions per second. So Conflux, that won't be a problem for Conflux. In real world, so PayPal, that's probably like 200 to 300 TPS. Well, for Visa, that's probably 3,000. So Conflux reached the level of Visa 3,000 in a truly decentralized network.
And I think that's important to note, and also not to FOMO this narrative of TPS to solve, everything, because really it should be about what's required for the application, for the use case, not simply just to have a million, TPS, as one of the teams quite famously got on stage very early in their own development, and probably, to their own detriment, started to claim these, ridiculous numbers, when in fact, it really should be about what matters, and that is what is required.
Yep. I'm going to explain that just now. So why a lot of people mentioning transaction per second, I can do this tons of thousand transactions per second.
Yeah.
So I beat Visa, but that's stupid. Why that's stupid? Because you have to ask whether the fundamentals or the upstream of the infrastructure is strong enough to support those applications. So why? So let me ask you questions. So what kind of applications do you see on EOS and Tron?
Fundamentally, with Tron, for example, you see a lot of simple applications like gambling, gaming, that kind of thing. If that's what you mean?
Right, exactly the same on EOS, right?
Right.
Yep. What about EOS? This is exactly the same, right?
Yep, exactly. Simple, very populace driven, not necessarily widespread use case beyond it, though.
Yep. So on Ethereum or on Bitcoins, what kind of applications do you see on Bitcoins and Ethereum?
Okay, so with Ethereum, you tend to see a bit of a mix. Those that tend to be standardized in the sense that they're utilizing their standards, trying to develop some sort of project. And with Bitcoin, again, it's a little bit different in my mind because Lightning's still developing. So really, it's still driving towards that global commodity itself. So they tend to be less focused on applications building upon it right now and just building themselves out. But certainly with Ethereum, they are focused on transactions through gas, but essentially the projects can really differ. But there's a stronger emergence of and stronger variance of quality in Ethereum, in my opinion.
Yeah, exactly. Quality you mentioned. So let me translate it a little bit. So on EOS and Tron, they are mostly games, gambling games.
Right.
They're coming in small amounts. Well, in Ethereum and the Bitcoins, they actually are finance. So think about Bitcoins. It's actually a currency. So currency is the deepest layer of the finance system. Next, on Ethereum itself, it's actually DeFi, so decentralized finance. So ICO is a decentralized finance tool, which we call it securitization. The only problem with ICO is because it doesn't come with regulation. It doesn't come with compliance. For securitization tool, it's actually a better tool than probably going to NASDAQ or NYSE because it's 724. And I mean, the token itself can go to even smaller granularity, right? For stock, you have to buy one share, right?
Sure.
So it's actually a better tool. And also today, you see some other decentralized finance. You see DAI, stable coins, right? You see, Compound, a lot of other things. So people talk about finance on Bitcoins and Ethereums, but people talk about games and gambling on EOS and Tron, right? Those sometimes people are comparing their TPS together, but those comparisons are totally meaningless. The reason is the upstream infrastructure are totally different.
I see, because and also what you're alluding to there, you're also alluding to the fundamental premise of the architecture, what they're built for, and you're suggesting that the quality for some of these blockchains is really driving their overall value as an ecosystem, whereas some are attracted to more of that short-term use case for more that experimental.
I will not call them short terms. They have their own application scenarios, right? Sometimes people say, okay, what's your chain position for? What kind of ecosystem position for for some? I don't see it that way. It's actually the applications choose the blockchain system itself. So for Ethereum and Bitcoins, they have thousands of machines, thousands of full nodes maintain their network, and all the people, they don't know each other. They have check and balance, right? They cannot sit down together and have schemes to change the book altogether. Well, on China, US, they only have like 10 or 20 nodes, right? They can easily sit down together and say, okay, let's do this. So they roll back transactions. So that's why people they don't dare to put thousands or millions of dollars on Tron in US, but instead they can put that money on Ethereum and Bitcoins.
Right. Okay. So are you suggesting that because Ethereum by fundamental technological design is more decentralized, but it tends more distributed by design as well, that it tends to attract the attention of the more tech
high value
and more high value.
High value applications. Okay. So that's why I'm saying, okay, so Conflux, they have a higher TPS and they solve the problems in financial world. They will follow the path of Ethereum and Bitcoins. But if you compare, okay, Conflux 3,000 transactions per second to some other chains, they have like, I don't know, tens of thousands TPS. It's pointless for such comparison.
Right. And obviously,
you have to really ask about the upstream infrastructure. That's the most important.
And clearly you're a major proponent of decentralization by technological design as well. And that's clearly why you've adopted the Nakamoto Consensus. That's clearly why you support the proof of work modeling as well, or the use of that. And more importantly, it's also why you are building out in the future into smart contract domains as well. If we now bring it back though to discuss some of those key words that relate to Conflux, one of them is extensibility. And this relates to what we're talking about now, because you want to grow, you want to expand. So talk us through that. What's the plan there, and how you do emerge as a forefront or a forerunner in this industry, so that you can have a place, for decades.
So I think one thing that Conflux make a real breakthrough based on Bitcoin and Ethereum, right? So we already see a lot of top developers, which they have a natural demand for higher throughput. They come to us and they are talking about running some prototypes of their projects on our testnet. So I think this breakthrough actually unites and get together of a group of most talented people. They will come up with real innovations. So I'll give you a metaphor. So for people, when people are using 3G on cell phones, they cannot imagine they actually are watching short video clips, they are watching Instagram, they're watching TikToks on the 4G smartphones. You cannot think about it when the fundamental layers actually hasn't been improved to that level.
Exactly.
When you're using a feature phone, you cannot think about tons of thousands of colorful apps on the smartphones, right? So what Conflux is doing right now is actually improve the fundamental throughput into a higher level, and improve that by 2 magnitude. So that's why I'm thinking, well, very colorful ecosystem will happen on this network. And then the network effect will gradually come into together.
Sure.
And you see things doing different things. So let me give you an example about like network effect. So for US and Tron, they have games and they have gamblings, but I don't see network effect coming together. They're actually collapsing because gamblings and games, they're actually, getting the distributed tokens back to a few owners again. And a few owners will game with each other to see who will run first, right? Then it go back from many to 1 and then go to 0. Right. And for Bitcoins, why there's a network effect. You see, like Bitcoins originally were used by those, dark-eyed peoples, but now they're used by people in those countries with high inflations and high cross-border transaction need. So that's why I'm saying network effect are actually coming together in Bitcoins and Ethereum, and maybe in the future in Conflux. They only happens on a very secure and decentralized upstream infrastructure.
Sure. But just harping back to that term of extensibility, I mean, again, trying to expand into the real sectors, into real verticals, into domains of business, for example, that's one thing that these other blockchains that you've mentioned tend not to do so much, because they are, as you said, recycling back the same participants, with the same strategies of gambling and gaming. It tends to be inner crypto, intra-crypto. But we are talking about how breaking those barriers into a much wider global frame so that we can expand, make this really a global system, make Conflux known. So how are you going to, again, move into this domain? How are you going to break those barriers down?
Yep. So I think the most important thing is going back to the originals is going to for user adoptions. So why user adopting your network, you're adopting your decentralized applications, because that has something to do with their their daily lives. So if it has to go back to the daily lives, it has to interact with the real world data, right? The real world data, I mean, it can be a lot of things. It can be, on the financial side, right? It can be bank interest rate. So if you have bank interest rate introduced to this network, people can start to do borrow and lending. Right, that's very basic needs among human beings, right? And maybe you can invest in invest your money into stocks or into some futures. So there's maybe do insurance, but this all involves traditional data from traditional business, and that requires a higher throughput capacity. So that's how you help extensibility. If you don't have that, The only thing you can do is all intra-cryptos.
Sure, right, but we've made it clear though that your core tenant is the high throughput through your tree graph. But my question more so is, it's one thing to have stellar tech, you know, to have this all architected by your team, and your team is, you know, it's stellar in itself. I've checked some of the credentials and it's there. But how do you bridge the gap into this world with strategies, with the process of, is it community, is it marketing, is it, what's the whole process to be known?
Of course. So exactly, a lot of our core team members, they are professors or they are academicians or engineers, right? They don't have a business background. Well, a lot of our supporters, investors, they are actually from they're venture capital guys. I mean, Sequoia China, they are our largest investors, and Shunwei Capital, they are actually the investment arm of Xiaomi smartphone, right?
Wow.
So so they have a very large supply chain systems. I mean, in supply chain, there's always bribery, and also like mismatching numbers, and also, a lot among those suppliers, especially for small and medium enterprises, they have a natural demand for financing. However, their financing costs are very high. So if they put all their financial numbers into the blockchain and become credible numbers, and they can share those numbers with banks. So banks can give them cheaper financing and help them grow. And the whole supply chain can become healthier.
Okay, so I just want to jump in. So basically what you're saying is you have checked your investors as well, and that was clearly they were top tier investors from both traditional and crypto sectors, and we can talk about that more, or those who are listening can go and check those. But it was more a case of understanding whether or not these investors were geared for real utility, to utilize your token in such a way in the future where they really expand and support the development of this in the frame of developers, in the frame of enterprise sectors, in the frame of private business, because clearly that has to be something of value for this to work. And even community, how do you build all this out beyond beyond the crypto community?
Okay, let me talk a little bit about this on the enterprise side. We actually come up with some enterprise solutions on blockchains. For some real usage cases. Supply chain finance is one thing I just mentioned. Another thing is information exchange on blockchain. So exchange valuable information. The example, the case is like, we have an investor, they call it Roam 360. So they are peer-to-peer lending platforms. They introduce traffic to P2P companies where they have capitals. And in China, the peer-to-peer lending companies are very crowded. They have over 100 companies. They have a blacklist for people who don't have a good credit. They want to exchange the information of blacklist. However, they don't have a place to exchange that because they're afraid. One thing, they don't want to give up their database all at once. Another thing is they're afraid other people give them bad information, wrong information. So how to solve that problem? So we tell them, okay, you can use Conflux. This Conflux can afford your demand for the technology, the throughput. This can happen like hundreds per seconds, right? But the way we do it is you raise questions in the network. So everybody got your questions. If they do have an answer, they will tell you whether this guy is good or bad, or they don't have the answer. So people's answers are committed to the network. They cannot be changed. If you lie, your answers will be bad or lower than the industry levels over a long time. I mean, even at the spot of time, you can actually cross-check with other answer providers to see if you're doing the right way, right? And for people who actually ask the questions, you will have to spend tokens. For people who answer questions, you actually get tokens. So you can use the tokens you get to ask questions again. So that's actually a real cases that we are actually working with our investors to solve problem. And this valuable information exchange scenarios exist in a lot of cases, and we will have these solutions become a standard package product and give to a lot of people.
Right. I have to say that was a lot of information just in that answer that I think we need to just hone into something more clear for us, you know, as the listeners to that explanation in terms of in terms of examples of actual businesses, actual enterprises, because that's what we want to know is this translating in the real world for companies in a pipeline that you are talking to in terms of solving solutions, doing real work, providing real offerings, and are they paying attention? You know, is this expanding into the verticals around the world already, or has it captured the attention? And if it hasn't, what's the strategy to do so to enable integration to happen and to flourish?
I think that comes step by step. It's all hard work. You have to go to the people, go to the enterprises, and tell them and share your ideology and tell them what's their problems and how your technology can answer those questions. There's no easy way. There's no silver bullet to do it.
No, but are you doing that? That's the question. You know, are you actually currently doing that? And talk us through that as the COO.
Yes, we are. Yes, we are. Because we have a lot of traditional, venture capital backers. We have also internet companies to back us. We have a very good reputation in our society, in this local society. So a lot of people are backing us, and they want to see this blockchain application to come into real things too, rather than just stay in a global currency like Bitcoins, right? So we are making that happen. So stay tuned.
Okay, so you can't tell us any names. That's what I'm hearing.
Yeah. I mean, because one thing I hate in this world is people go to say, okay, I'm working with some big names, and the other side they are, trying to speculate in their coin's price. That's something I don't want to do. I only want those.
I respect
first,
that.
And then I'll let you know.
Okay, and I appreciate that. So you're going to let us know as the NDAs is beyond the NDA, but when the deals are signed, that's when you can disclose at that point.
Not just the deals signed, but the deals has actually happened.
Okay.
The things are already applied, and people are using it and get benefits from it.
Okay.
And that's why I'm going to, tell the real story and who are using it and who are the participants.
Right. So clearly utility centered in every way. Appreciate that as well, Forgiven. Now, concurrency, that's a really important term. We need to explore that in terms of what it means, why it's relevant, and why it's fundamental to your whole system.
Which current, what would you say? I'm sorry about question.
Concurrency. So being concurrent, having a system in which you can operate concurrently with your whole design. Why is that term so fundamental to your architecture, to your planning, to your modeling, and to the success of your Conflux?
Okay. So concurrent blocks. So why I'm using concurrent blocks all the time, right? So that go back to the tech details of Conflux Consensus. Okay, so I'll go through that because in a proof of work mechanism, there is latency. So how's latency generated, right? Why there's latency? Because in this whole network, once you mine the block, you have to broadcast your information of the mine block to the whole internet. That takes a minute, right? That takes a minute to go to every corner of the internet. In the meantime, another full node could probably highly likely to generate another block, right? And they haven't got your information or your message that you have mined out the block. And I mine a block, and then I attach my block to the block I've already seen. The other guy are doing the same thing, right? So in Bitcoins, these are considered as forks. And whoever has the longest chain going forward will be held forever, and the other one is dropped, right? In Conflux, none of them are dropped. All of them are utilized. So these two blocks are called concurrent blocks because they are generated almost at the same time. They are not exact same time, but they are all within that 1 minute latency time. So they don't see each other. So they all try to link them to the previous one. That's why I call them concurrent blocks. And that's why Conflux Consensus actually include all of them instead of dropping one and keeping the other.
Right. And it also relates once again back to the tree graph as well. Now, I want to talk to you about Rust in the context of a new open protocol, because obviously that's a very contemporary protocol in itself and a language. So what's happening there as you emerge and start to be more open for and more accessible for developers.
So to be honest, Rust is the fundamental layers for layer one. It's actually not, we're not using Rust to make it more accessible for developers.
Okay.
Right? Rust, the core team adopting Rust is because Rust is a more secure language.
Okay, so you're using that in-house more so?
Not just in-house, it's open sourced. But why using Rust? Rust is actually a more secure language. It's developed by the brother Mozilla, right? They're using the same language, and it's a more secure language.
Okay.
I think another team, Nervous, is also adopting Rust as well. So a lot of distributed database like PingCap, they're using Rust as well. But I mean, for the app developers, they don't have to use Rust. So for the VM, we are compatible with Ethereum. They can use Stability as well.
Okay,
but
got it.
For the core developers for the blockchain, you got to use Rust going forward.
Okay, so developers only, I get it now, they're going to be utilizing Rust because it's just simply a good protocol. But really to onboard for applications in the future for Conflux, it's going to be open to a multitude of different languages.
Exactly, and right now it's compatible with Ethereum, so in VM, you use Stability.
Okay, and that will no doubt improve as you, again, expand to other blockchains because you're agnostic in many respects with regard to working with other blockchains, I would imagine, into sort of a cross-chain, collaboration. Now, I want to talk to you also about some of the claims that you have made as a team. Now, one of them is that you have been evaluated on Amazon, I think it's ECZ, is that the right term? Or with their clusters, with a $20,000 full node system. There's been references to Amazon. So I want to understand that. Why is that reference there? What is it about?
You mean why we're claiming about Conflux claiming about 20,000 full nodes there, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, so I'm not sure you know about this fact. So I think Bitcoin has 13,000 full nodes, and Ethereum has about like 18,000. I mean, I don't have exact number. That could be a historic number. So why Conflux is using like 20,000 full node number there is trying to say it's a fully decentralized network. It's not like 21 super nodes. Right. So that's why they emphasize that.
Okay, well, that's clear. I mean, everything we've discussed is all about decentralization today. Another thing also I wanted to ask you, forgiven, is with regard to access to your literature itself. Now, you have academic papers, you also have tech presentations, and more than that. Do you encourage people to go in and really explore the fundamentals? Because a lot of people don't have that tech knowledge. Should they go and do this, or what's the best way they can learn more about the complex tech that you are?
So I think actually Conflux is not that complicated. Conflux actually makes a very simple modification. I mean, in theory or for people's understanding, but that's actually very complicated in engineering and put that into production, right? So I will encourage people to try to understand Conflux consensus a little bit better. We actually will come up with more games to say how to pick pivot chain, and then how to decide which is pivot chain block, and then how you actually, if you mine another new block, and how you try to become the next pivot chain block. Okay. So that we will have a fun game about that in the future. So we will encourage people to explore that Conflux consensus in the future. It's not very complicated on appearance.
Okay. Yeah. Well, hopefully there'll be blogs that people can go to also, where the simplified versions of the academic papers are available. I think that's going to be key. So we spread the word more about what is Conflux in less words for more impact. Because right now, for those who have read the academic paper, it is quite a sophisticated read. Now, I want to talk to you about comparative and contrastive discussions of other blockchains. Namely, I want to talk about Algorand, because I've heard in the crypto space that there's references and likenesses to you and them. So I want to ask you directly: is Algorand the US version of Conflux?
So I think blockchain is constrained to the internet, but not limited to the border of the country, right? So you wouldn't call Algorand the American Conflux. So I don't think people should call Conflux the Chinese Algorand. It's
Right.
exactly.
Yeah, and I only ask you this because, you know, there is that sort of discussion among crypto colleagues, you know, this kind of commentary that's going on. So let's pull it away from that for a second.
The metaphor is because both teams have a very high quality standard in terms of their academic background, their engineering capability, and their theory levels.
Okay.
So they all have true innovations. They all have this engineering background to put this into reality. So that's why people put these two together instead of some other projects, you know.
Right, makes a lot of sense. Now, your team, I want to ask you about that more specifically in detail. We discussed that you have highly credible and highly experienced team members, but talk us through the specifics of why they are so valuable and how you can prove that they have the ability to really build this out for the long term.
So a lot of the core team members, they are top coders, they're top academician, or they're, you know, experienced engineers. So so in this core team, they have won 3 IOI gold medals representing China when they are in high school. So the core founder, Fan Long, he himself has won 2 IOI gold medals when he was in high school in 2 consecutive years, right? Wow. And 2 members in the team, they got the 2nd place in the ECM ICPC World Finals, 2nd place, right? So, and also the only Turing Award winner, the only Chinese Turing Award winner, Andrew Yao, is the chief scientist of the Conflux Foundation. So all these guys, they have, you know, the very. So that's why I think people, you know, compare Conflux to Algorand, right? So they have experience in coding. They have very high levels of theories, and they all come together. And another thing is these guys are all connected through Fan Long. So let me give you an example. So Fan Long, so he got admitted into Tsinghua University, and then he studied under Andrew Yao. So that's why Andrew Yao got engaged and become the chief advisor. So the chief technology officer, Ming Wu, so he is a mentor for Fan Long when Fan Long was interned for Microsoft Research Asia.
Okay. And
now a lot of other core members, they are also from the Yao's class, the Andrew Yao's class, because they are classmates or they are competitors when they're doing such code contests.
Okay.
And this long-lasting friendship, they're all united under Andrew Yao. So that's why I'm saying this team can go a long way.
Right. And I ask you this because whenever I hear that they're all they've known each other for years and they've been in the same classes together, it always makes me I feel the need to ask and investigate this further because as you would rightly know, many startups, whether that be in China or beyond, whether it be in Korea or even in the US or even anywhere in the world, actually, some of them are doing these superficial announcements. They're getting professors from anywhere they can to really promote shitty projects, you know, that aren't really there for the long term. They're just there for a quick shill to make some money and get out. Now, how can we know beyond the credibility of these people from their past, how can we know that collectively they are doing, not can do, but are doing the job? That because obviously you're moving towards mainnet, you're moving more to the reveals in time. So do you nuance this with proof? Can you showcase some of the things that they actually do?
Right. I will demo the Conflux testnet and let people. Where's the
that would be awesome, actually. Yeah, if you want to demo that, if you can show us a bit more of the evidence of the testnet developments, that would be really cool.
But one thing I want to counter argue about, you know, why this team are not about the phenomena you're just talking about. So one simple question will state the truth or the fact. So how this team can actually making quick money by using professors' reputations? How?
Well, you know, if you're asking me, I mean, you're trying to build out something where you're organic. You're trying to build out something that's mining driven, community driven. So in that respect, it's a lot more difficult to do. But it all comes down to raises and what you actually did behind the scenes to get this far that I couldn't possibly know. So that's why I have to head it, throw the ball back in your court for that answer.
Yeah. So the key things to differentiate whether the teams are doing real things or they are trying to monetize the professor's reputation is see, okay, whether these guys already have a ERC20 tokens before they have anything, right? Conflux doesn't have a ERC20 tokens, and Professor Andrew Yao won't allow that thing happen.
Right.
They will only allow circulations once their mainnet launch, and come with the native tokens.
Okay.
Right. So there's no way this team can come up with bullshit and monetize based on bullshit.
Okay.
They don't have
I like the way you're talking. It's like an Aussie, so I appreciate it. So no bullshit on the blockchain. You're going to a native token. You're going to get real about that. Well, let's get stuck into having a look at your demos, because you mentioned that you can do that. Now, testnets, at that stage now where you can reveal some things. Let's have a look at what you're doing right now. And
let me share my screen.
Okay, sure.
Let me share my screen. Here we go. Okay, so let's go to Conflux website.
Okay. Yep.
So here we go. Here's the Conflux website. Oh, it's ugly, man. So
it looks fine, actually. So this is, if you'd like to know more, you can see on the.
One thing I would like to talk about is that people feel touch blockchains through the appearance, through the front end work, right? So these guys, they're very talented in their back end, but that doesn't mean they're good front end developers.
Well, at least you have one.
They're trying to solve that, right? But they try to look like Augury and Definity's main page, but unfortunately, it's not now. But they will improve. Okay.
Okay. So you have, in the utility section, you have two options. You can click on the wallet as well. So here we're exploring that. How quick is this?
Okay. Let's close wallet. So this is a preset wallet. So let me do a new wallet. So new wallet. Okay. So you have new wallet. Right. So what the fuck is wallet? You have seed and you have password. So make sure you do the print screen so you can save them.
Yep.
And then you create now.
Right.
Okay. You create, and then so you have a balance. So on the bottom corner it said testnet faucets. Do you want a coin? You say sure. Okay. Okay. So we'll tell you in 30 seconds. Okay. So you get a token like for 30 seconds. So let's see what else we got. So on utility you got Conflux scans. Right. So let's go to the Conflux scan. Oh, wow. The transaction per second is running at 700 something. Okay.
So why is that wow? Tell us why. Why is that wow?
Okay. So actually, there are not many people really sending coins to each other at this point. So the engineers actually simulating a lot of transactions. So they're trying to push the throughput under some stress tests to see if they can reach 3,000. As they say. Okay, so why they are not at 3,000? The problem is the front end cannot afford like 3,000. Once it goes to 1,000, the front end will collapse here. Okay, so they push that to 700 something. Okay, so if we click into a blocks, you can see like how many transactions it wrapped into. They have 100 pages of such transactions wrapped in this block. Got it. Okay. Yeah. So you can see this. There's a basically you see the difference between these two blocks is about like 8 seconds. So they are generate blocks every 5 seconds also on average. Okay, so this is like some stats. You can see miner count, there are 41. So there are some external miners from not just the core team setup. So this is not a centralized game. You can monitor it if you want, Brad. Okay, so let's go back to the wallet we just created. Okay, check balance, we have one. Okay, so let's add an address. So add address. Okay, let's copy this address. Let's see if we can send something to this address. Okay, send, create transaction, and transaction is valid. Let's do send. Sending. Okay, send successfully. Let's copy this transaction hash ID, and then go back to the scans. Okay, let's try. Yeah. Okay. So this transaction 0.5. We will see whether it's 0.5. So another thing I would like to show everyone is something. Oh, sorry. Go back to the screen. Another thing I would like to show is you can go to the main page. Okay. So go to the main page and go to document, go to developer documents.
Sure.
And then you go to the GitHub of Conflux chain.
Mm-hmm.
And then, okay, so if you want to become a miner, so you can go to the installation type and then follow the exact instructions and become a miner. You will synchronizing the blocks.
Right.
And see how this happen from your dining room, from your bedroom, from anywhere in this world. From Australia, from UK, from anywhere.
And you've actually done this yourself, haven't you?
Yes, I just did that last night, and actually at mine. So let's see here. So here's my so here we go. Where's okay? So see this address? I got like 24,000 something. I mine some. This is my address I did here last night. So go to the scans again. Mm-hmm. Go to the scans and then check this address. So you see mined blocks, 32 blocks. So I mined them last night. Right. Can you see blocks here?
See that. Yes, I can see that.
Yeah. Okay, now I'm done with the demos. I'll come back. Mm-hmm. Come back. Okay, so awesome. One thing I'd like to emphasize is build your own miners yourself, and then you can mine to the next testnet and prove this is a truly decentralized network instead of it's fully controlled. A lot of blockchain, they claim there's blockchains, but however they have supernodes, and all the supernodes are controlled by themselves.
Yes, and it also involves often staking systems which borderline on securitization of the system rather than the true authentic utility. So I think you raise a good point there. But let's explore this in the constructs of the next discussion. That's IEO exchanges as well, because you've made it very clear that you're all about organic growth. You're all about trying to be that native token. Now, regardless of that, though, is the exchanges are going to knock on your door. People will want you to do an IEO as well, because that's just the way that things are moving at the moment. So what do you say to the interests of the exchanges right now who continue to show, arguably, to show an interest in you as a utility token of value to list essentially on their platforms?
Yes, so some of the exchanges has already reached out to Conflux, say, hey, would you like to do an IEO? Especially really hot. Recently, if you don't do it now, and this hot trend can pass.
Right, exactly.
That won't matter. After 6 months. So the answer told them exactly I just told you. The Professor Andrew Yao, who is actually one of the board member of Conflux Foundation, he won't allow any ERC20 tokens circulated before the mainnet launch. We got to wait until the mainnet launched. So that's my answer. Go back to the IEOs. So IEO itself, I think it's IEO itself is always fad. It will pass.
Yes.
It's like ICOs.
Yep. Okay. Now let's talk about the native token, though. If this is the case where the professor who's leading this will not list anything but a native token, does that mean that you still can technically do an IEO if that's something that you decide as a team with your native token in the future, or is it something that is completely off the table as not something for discussion?
That's up to the decision of the team. I don't have a 100% sure answer for you right now, but only if the exchanges will incorporate the native tokens into their own technology infrastructure that can happen. But other than that, I don't know how this
Right. And is there any evidence of that already? Like, can you see any examples where they have accepted the native token of some of the ecosystems and then listed them?
Right. So I think Green is a very good example that they have strong community support. Although at the very beginning there aren't many biggest exchanges incorporate Greens into their exchanges. However, because of the strong community support, some smaller exchanges decided to list them on their exchanges to attract traffic to those exchanges. So that works. Right. So I think actually that's the spirit of decentralization. That's the spirit of blockchain. The weak and the small can actually compete with the large and the centralized because they are willing to go a step further.
Sure. Now, what in the case of some exchanges having interest in certain projects? For example, let's say hypothetically Binance, for example. Now, let's say that they have a special, interest in, for example, Bitcoin. Now, you are also trying to do something innovative in your own right. Is it in the interest of these exchanges to bring on board something that is trying to not challenge Bitcoin, but sit beside them, and be your own ecosystem to build out? Is it really something that some of these exchanges may not do because they want to support certain projects themselves?
This can happen. This can totally happen because some exchanges have their own blockchain systems. They don't want to give support to another blockchain system to become another potential competitor to their own projects, right?
So is that a problem?
I don't think that's a problem because centralized, exchanges definitely provide an easy way for people to join the blockchain society or world. But that's not the goal. That's not the purpose. If you turn upside down the purpose and the methods, the blockchain world itself only exists, right? So the blockchain's world exists based on Bitcoins and Ethereum, and centralized exchanges happens after that.
Right.
So if Bitcoin and Ethereum itself don't go further, or they don't have newer things to help them to go forward, to push the blockchain community and society further, this whole world will just become Bitcoin Ethereum itself. And the exchanges, right, and they will only eat a small pie based on Bitcoins and Ethereum.
Okay.
If they want to become a bigger guy, they definitely want this world to become bigger.
Right.
So they will have to help.
Yes, because they want a market share as an exchange. So anything that has a strong community, they will want to, onboard arguably. So let's talk about specifics in terms of mainnet. Are you sure that this is coming Q3 or Q4? Is that the plan right now? And that would also infer the release of the native token at that point somehow.
I think the mainnet will be ready from Q3 of this year to probably Q1 next year. It really depends on a lot of dynamics. One thing is whether the technology itself is ready. The testnet can be running up stably for a long time. Other things, it could be liquidity for this blockchain world itself. It definitely has to be realistic. Right?
Okay. So that makes a lot of sense. Now, that's a long period of time. So many people listening may switch off now because they're thinking, well, it's such a long time, why should I care? Because it is a highly speculative industry. So we need to talk about how you're incentivizing this gap for interest, for the sake of those who do want to support Conflux. How are you going to incentivize mining? How are you going to incentivize proof of work in terms of people doing things to really support and promote Conflux?
Yeah, thank you for mentioning that. I know a lot of projects actually got people's interests aligned by doing an ICO. So a lot of people already hold their tokens without even anything happen. So they become natural believers to promote such projects. Right. We didn't do an ICO. So how we do that? We actually launching a community program called Conflux Representatives, and we try to engage people through the spirit of proof of work.
Okay.
So proof of work in the computer systems is very easy. How much computer you own, how many GPUs you own, so that decides how much computing power you own, so that they actually improve your successful rate mining the next block, and you get a lot of money once, right? But for humans work, it's actually very difficult to quantify. So how do we do that? So our way is we invite influential people or people who are really believe in Conflux to help promote Conflux, and in a lot of ways, marketing, development, business, education, a lot of things. But we actually say, hey buddy, we would like you to become a representative, and we have actually letting people writing a commitment letter, say, hey, why do I like this project, and what I would like to do for such project. And then we will let people run for 3 months. It's totally, willingness. We will not force people to do anything, but people will do it.
Right. And that's
self-driven.
And that's really good to know, because a lot of people have not been able to participate in the ambassador programs, for example, simply because there's just not enough of the opportunities for the masses. Now, what you're suggesting is that the crypto community can participate. They can go and do work. They can go and not necessarily promo and FOMO, but they can utilize their time to go and endeavor to understand Conflux and then bring that to the wider frame and be rewarded for it, because you it seems, are suggesting this is a strategy to fill this gap before the native tokens are released, so that people can really espouse the growth of your ecosystem.
Exactly. So like I said, I will have people like probably running for 3 months, and then they will summarize their work they have done for this community, and then we will have people who participate in the community work to vote for each other to decide how much value this guy should get for Conflux tokens in the future. And then we will publicly announce the tokens that are awarded to a specific person, so people or the community can actually govern this activity, say, okay, the foundation itself doesn't cheat against the people who already contribute to this community.
That's really cool, because let's say, for example, a few influencers, myself included. Now, at the moment, I am not doing your typical sponsored content for pay for peace, but I am looking towards doing ambassadorships because I have to survive. Now, I like the idea of transparency where anyone involved, whether they're influencers, whether they're just anybody who's doing work really, are positioned in a situation where it's transparent exactly what they're getting, because it shouldn't be something that's needs to be private, and that they're doing work, because those two things should be something that aligns with you if the work is quality.
Right, exactly. So basically, see, Brad, you are interacting with me, so you're making a video with Conflux and for free. So this is everybody who is watching this video, I'll tell everybody, Brad did this Conflux for free. We don't have a commercial contract. No. We didn't have any preset, nothing. No. But Brad spent tons of hours reading Conflux material and did hours of this video interview with me. So I told Brad, so hey, do this work and let's do more. And then come back to me 3 months. I will write a comment for Brad, say, okay, so what Brad has did for this thing, and this comment with Brad's summary will be presented to the whole community.
Yeah, I really like that. And we did talk about this because obviously, as I said, I'm looking at ambassadorships, and when I read through Conflux, I was interested in the prospects if that was going to be something. But this model is actually one step above that, because it means that it's really transparent, it's really open, and not just for someone like me who has the luck of being in a position where I can reach out. This is really for everyone. It puts it on the same playing field, and I really like the voting system, because at the end of the day, it should be about the people deciding what is of value, what's merit, what is of merit in a very meritocratic process. So kudos to you and your team, because again, it really, really puts forth a challenge to those who want to shill, because this is not the project for them.
Yeah, exactly. I think this approach actually naturally excludes those people who want to make a quick gain on things that are not real. Because if you want to make a quick gain, you go to the projects, those projects, they are not real because they make a quick. So that's how you make those projects.
Exactly.
Those are our cheap projects, right? They don't have a future.
Yeah, they don't. And often the shittier the project, the more they pay. And they tend to attract, the crypto sharks in that situation. That's just the truth. And I tend to see from my experiences, the projects that are really trying to build something longitudinally valuable, they're more focused on trying to attract quality, not quantity. And they're trying to also attract those who are willing to work before payment, not just simply expect handouts for their fame, for their subscription numbers. There's a lot involved, because influence can be really risky because of the speculative environment we're in.
Exactly. So that's why, Brad, I like your spirit.
No worries.
the very few people that I know that are willing to do such things with people based on purely meritocracy.
I appreciate that from you guys as well, because at the end of the day, you could have gone down the other track. Let's be real. You could have taken the strategy of shilling this and made a lot of money, but you didn't. And I think that's also why you deserve the respect that because it's much more challenging to build this out the way you want to do it, to have the native token first, to only engage in those who want to support you in the proof of work model you've built for media and PR. That's all going to be very challenging for you. But with the right number of people, with the right approach to spread your name, I think honestly that there's every chance this can flourish, this whole approach, because we need a change. We need to start seeing quality be paramount in the conversation so that people can trust this is a genuine utility that's trying to do something for the long term.
Exactly, exactly. So again, let me call for everybody who is watching this video. As long as you're interested in us, please go to our main page. Go to try out our testnet. If you're developers, you have some experience in coding, go take a look at our code and maybe even try to become a miner yourself. So see yourself whether this is a real thing or it's another shitty project. Yep. And then you decide whether you want to, to promote this project and promote this project, not just for this project only, but for the blockchain industry for the long term. I think that's why we do things together. That's Absolutely. Why we share the same belief.
Well said, mate. So to finish off, I want to thank you for your time as the COO of what is to be, arguably a very important project for the future of blockchain, for the future of tokenized economies the world over, and most importantly, to really change the game when it comes to means of mining, means of giving people access to new ways to provide for their own autonomy, and franchise their own economic positions. Things are definitely happening technologically right now. You're going to move into a mainnet this year, and then you'll see the token emerge from a very serious team. So thank you very much for everything you've explained. It's been a really long interview, and everyone who's been listening, you have survived what has been a very interesting crypto Conflux conversation. And if you'd like to know more, look below, because there will be all the links provided for all the access to the socials. But because of the length of the interview, I want to thank you for this time, and hopefully, mate, we can catch up again for more brief conversations that are focused on different parts of Conflux in the future.
Okay, thanks so much, Brad. Not just focus on Conflux, let's focus on blockchain.
Absolutely, mate. And all the best as you continue to develop the tech. Take care.
Thank you very much. Thank you for keeping an eye on us. Thanks.
You're welcome, mate. Take care.